very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. This event was originally supposed to be a conversation between me and Charlie. Now it will be a conversation about Charlie. It will be a conversation about his life and what his assassination means for our country. The enemies of civilization, the assassin, as well as the people who excused and cheered him on, thought that they could stop Charlie Kirk's movement. In reality, they have not even stopped his lecture tour. I would like to begin, if you would indulge me, with a prayer. Charlie had a great affinity for St. Michael the Archangel, and I think the St. Michael prayer speaks especially to our moment. In the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. 12 days ago, a ruined soul assassinated one of the brightest figures of our generation. And when I say bright, I am not just talking about Charlie's rhetorical skills, which had surpassed just about every public figure around. And I don't just mean his political genius, which led an 18-year-old kid to found the most significant cultural institution on the American right, 18 years old, and which led, through all of his political achievements, to the president, the vice president, the Secretary of State, among others, to our entire government showing up to his beautiful memorial service yesterday. I am not talking about any of Charlie's accomplishments, be they in broadcasting, publishing, coalition building, debate, or any of the other many things that Charlie had mastered. Charlie's brightness came not primarily from his professional accomplishments. They came from his character. You did not have to be a personal friend of his to notice it. You could see it in everything he did. There was simply a light and a levity to the man. And it was constant, even when he was stressed, even when he was arguing, which was frequent, even when he suffered setbacks. That light and that levity stemmed from one fact: Charlie's Savior lives. We're mourning Charlie right now. And I think it's right to mourn Charlie. I think it's right to grieve. I have no use for the happy-clappy kind of modern religion that tells us we can't be sad when our friend dies simply because we have faith in his salvation. Death is bad. Murder is bad. People who commit murder need to be punished. People who celebrate murder need to be punished too. Death reminds us that something has gone wrong. Death was not part of the original plan. Jesus wept at the death of his friend just moments before he raised him from the dead. We can know that in everything God works for good with those who love him, who are called according to his purpose, while still recognizing the difference between good and evil. We can entrust Charlie's soul to our Lord Jesus Christ as Charlie always entrusted himself, while still knowing that his assassin took something from us that he didn't have to take. What the assassin took was not even Charlie. He could not have taken Charlie. Charlie belongs to God, as do we all. What the assassin took from us, more precisely, is what we imagined Charlie's future would be. That is part of what makes death so shocking. The realization that our plans are not guaranteed. Man plans and God laughs. But, we say, he was going to do this. Oh, she was going to do that. We were going to speak at the University of Minnesota together. We weren't, actually. We do not have ultimate control over those things. Everyone who knew Charlie, and many people who did not know Charlie personally, knew that he would be president one day. We knew it. We knew it. But would is a conditional verb, and it depends upon ifs that are out of our control. Charlie would have been president, but he won't be. In the wake of Charlie's death, many people are presuming to declare what he would have believed about this or that issue. Not what he did believe, mind you, what he would have believed, what he would have said if he had lived longer. This kind of talk is as absurd as it is unseemly. It is appointed for men to die once and after that the judgment, with the exception of Charlie's beloved wife and the people very closest to him. Those who would chime in for Charlie today are appropriating an authority that does not belong to them. It's a usurpation. At best, it is a waste of time. And one thing we all know Charlie never did was waste time. He worked about 27 hours a day, 8 days a week. Charlie accomplished more in his 31 years than most people could accomplish in many lifetimes. His most public accomplishments were political. His most important were religious. He wanted to be remembered for his faith. He wanted to help as many souls to heaven as he could. If you want to honor Charlie, go to church, read the Bible, pray, and do it right now. Do it right now. Do not wait. Now might be your only chance. Many people I've seen are doing just that. I saw it myself last Sunday. You will not be surprised to learn that I attend a rather traditional church. Smells and bells and suits and ties and all that sort of thing. One thing that means is that it's easy to spot someone new. Someone who was just looking for the nearest church because he felt a sudden desire to be close to God. Someone whose Sunday best is usually a t-shirt and jeans. I saw a lot of t-shirts at Mass last Sunday. And I was thrilled to see those t-shirts. I was thrilled to see those t-shirts. Next week they should put on a jacket. But last week it was nice. It was nice to see. Because it meant that people who had left the church were returning. It meant perhaps that people who had never been to church were coming for the first time. And they were showing up because of Charlie. I was one of the hundreds of thousands of people who attended Charlie's memorial yesterday. When you count those who streamed it, I was one of over 100 million people who was watching it live. I suspect all of you were too. It was a remarkable event in many ways. Two things stood out in particular. First, Charlie's widow, Erika, gave one of the most powerful speeches I have ever heard in my life. I was sitting with some of the toughest politicians in the world. There was not a dry eye in the house. In just one of several arresting moments in her speech, Erika forgave the man who murdered her husband because Christ on the cross asked his Father to forgive his killers, because we all ask God to forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us. It was amazing. At a time when half the country, it seems, minimizes, excuses, and even celebrates political violence, Erika Kirk gave us a glimpse of Calvary. But the second most striking part of the memorial was that the leadership of our federal government spent 4 hours proclaiming the gospel to the entire world. That should not have been surprising. We are a country founded by people who called themselves pilgrims. We were settled by people who said that we would be a model of Christian charity. Our government was established on the premise that we are endowed by our Creator with rights. Our national anthem declares, "Conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust." Seeing our national leaders proclaim the gospel should not have been surprising, but it was. Because we had not seen it in a very, very long time. Many of us had not seen it in our entire lives. The memorial was perfectly Charlie. On the one hand, it was about eternity, about the truths that transcend all ages and places. On the other hand, it was eminently political, temporal, local, particular. And there is no contradiction between the two. Because we are all both of those things. We are souls which are eternal, and we're bodies which are temporal. People tend to fall into one of two errors on this subject today. They either think that politics is everything, more important than family, more important than morality, so important we murder people over disagreements. Or they think that politics is nothing, that we should ignore policy fights and debates, and keep our pure and precious hands from being sullied in the muck of practical politics. Charlie understood that both errors miss the mark, that we need to keep our eyes on eternal things, that we're never quite at home in this world because we are pilgrims on our way to the heavenly Jerusalem, but also that we are political creatures in space and time, which means that we have to do things. Means that our faith will look like something, that we will give a certain shape to our political community, which exists for the common good. So what do we do now? What do we do now? We should forgive our enemies' trespasses, and we should prevent our enemies from trespassing again in the future. Some people seem to misunderstand Christian forgiveness. They think that it's somehow contrary to criminal justice, that it means being a wimp, that it means letting criminals off the hook, that it means anarchy. On the contrary, Christian forgiveness is about recognizing that vengeance belongs to the Lord who will repay. That's the first part. While criminal justice belongs to the civil authority which does not bear the sword in vain. Erika Kirk forgave her husband's killer. The state of Utah will inject poison into that killer's veins until he's dead. There is no contradiction between those two things. Christian forgiveness does not demand that we allow the cruel to ravage the whole earth. It demands that we love our enemies, and sometimes love is tough. In our personal lives, love means praying for those who persecute us. In politics, love usually means punishing the guilty, both for the protection of the innocent as well as for the good of the criminals. No one benefits from crime, decay, and disorder. Not the rest of us, and not the criminals themselves. We cherish what we call the marketplace of ideas in America. In the wake of Charlie's assassination, many are inclined merely to redouble our devotion to the free marketplace of ideas. This instinct, I think, misses a crucial step. We had a marketplace of ideas. The left shot it up. If we wish to restore the healthy exchange of ideas, we need to refortify the marketplace. Marketplaces of all kinds require rules, confidence, and common media of exchange. They require, in other words, order. Liberty requires order. You cannot be undisciplined and free. You cannot be ignorant and free. That's why we don't let toddlers vote, okay? We all know this at a very basic level. What we must now do is reassert order for the exchange of ideas, for the flourishing of our public square, for liberty. We must insist upon the acceptance of basic truths and moral goods, not as the asymptotic goal of endless debate, but as the axiomatic foundation without which debate cannot occur. C.S. Lewis called these principles the Tao. Others call them the natural law, or the first principles of practical reason. We're in a university. If you've ever studied algebra, you know that you must begin with certain axioms. You have to begin with premises like A equals A, or if A equals B, then B equals A. That's about all the math that I know, but I at least got that far. Those axioms are themselves unprovable, but if we don't assume them, we can't prove anything else. The same is true in politics and morality. We cannot quite prove that we should live in an ordered society, but without assuming so, we can't prove anything else. If our society is to function, we must foreclose certain antisocial behaviors and certain suicidal ideologies. We must stop, to borrow a phrase from Chesterton, the thought that stops thought. Practically, this means that we must stigmatize certain evil ideas and behaviors, and we must ostracize people who insist upon them. More practically, this means that people who persist in such disorder should lose their social standing. In certain cases, they should lose their jobs. With any political reform, we have to err on the side of caution. But a good place to begin would be with those who celebrate the murder of an innocent man who simply wanted to talk it out. You have to begin from that point. You cannot maintain a hospital if the nurses seek to murder half the patients. You cannot operate a school if the teachers wish death upon the students. You cannot run a restaurant if the customers think that the waiters want to poison them. There must be consequences to heal this national trauma and to reestablish a healthy politics. Those consequences require clarity of vision, courage in our convictions, and an extraordinary amount of God's grace. I believe it can be done. You all who have come out here tonight, despite the threats, despite the hardship, have shown that you all believe that it can be done. The man that we honor tonight gave his life in the confident hope that it can be done. We must never despair. We must never surrender to the forces that seek our destruction. And we must work tirelessly to ensure that this moment truly becomes a turning point for America. Thank you very much. I know I said we shouldn't speak for Charlie. Charlie would have loved that. I think we all know it. Now, also in honor of Charlie, and also to say no to the forces who would stop us, we are going to have an open conversation tonight. You can ask me anything, and if you disagree, you can cut to the front of the line. You've lined up already. That was fast. Thank you. Thanks. Yes, very kind. Thank you. It's very kind.
I just had to say before my question, Michael, Charlie was the best of us, and I think he was going to be the next vice president. You're the best of us now. You got to be the next vice president.
Very kind. That's very kind. If the last week has taught us anything, it's that no one fills Charlie's shoes, and it'll take about 500 of us to lift up the microphone. But I think everyone wants to pitch in.
So my question to you, Michael, is we all know that the fall came through the woman. Evil comes into the world through the woman. And since women have gotten the right to vote in the United States, with the exception of technology, I think every single aspect of American lifestyle has gone down: the nuclear family, open borders, welfare state, the abortion state, homosexuality, transgender abortion, defund the police, the attack on our military, the attack on masculinity. I could go on and on. I really do think that we have to have a serious conversation about repealing the 19th Amendment. I wonder what you think.
It's a mixed response. I was waiting for you to add, burnt toast at breakfast was because of the... No, I'm joking. Look, the really hardcore trad conservatives would say that the decay did not begin when women got the right to vote. It's when anyone got the right to vote. That, you can go all the way back to the Garden of Eden. I actually do have to correct one point. Eve eats the apple first, and then, Adam goes next. But St. Paul blames Adam for the sin entering the world because man is the head of woman, because man is the head of his household. And so I try not to blame women for on their own. But for one reason that the feminists are not going to like, because I think men need to lead the women in their lives also. So it's a way to offend everybody, I guess. But I have a compromise, because I agree. If you look at single women, they vote for Democrats overwhelmingly, although people like Charlie were able to move that vote to 40% of women under the age of 30 voted for Trump in 2024. So we've made progress, but I see your point. And so I have a solution. Having looked at the demographics and how they vote, I would say, okay, to the people who want to appeal the 19th Amendment, we can take the vote away from the single women who vote for Democrats. Hear me out. And then we can give 2 votes to the married women who vote for Republicans. Is that a deal? That's called compromise. That's called bipartisanship, I think. Thank you for your question.
Can I just say one last thing?
Sure.
So for 120 years, we had a border. And then in 1920, the 19th Amendment came out. And 4 years later, we had to get the Border Patrol. Just something to think about.
No, it's fair. Hey, listen. The 17th Amendment wasn't great either, the 18th Amendment. So I'm willing to, look, I'll lump the 19th in there too. Those progressive amendments. But I like my conciliation on that. I think that's a great... Then we're going to win all 57 states.
You're our next Vice President, Michael. God bless you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Michael. I know you've said prior that the summation of liberalism is, I hate you, Dad. And we recently lost a husband and a father, but I know you're a husband and a father, and I love my own father very much. So I've just got a two-part question for you. What is the best piece of advice, one that lives in your head, that you have received from your father? And as a husband and a father, what piece of advice would you offer to the husbands and fathers here and those of us who are to become one soon?
The best advice that I've gotten from my father, he gave it to me in words when I was a teenager. I'm sure he won't even remember it, but he's also just demonstrated it in his behavior consistently for my entire life, which is, I was a punk kid. I wanted to fall away from religion. I thought Christopher Hitchens was really clever. And I mentioned this to my father, and he said, yeah, you'll probably come back to it in your 20s or something. You'll return. I said, what are you talking about? I'm so smart. I've figured everything out. I'm 13 and I know God doesn't exist. And he didn't react in a strong way. He just said, yeah, you'll probably come back into it. Just a kind of steady pace. And my beloved father has demonstrated this, and I think men really need to demonstrate this at all times. He's kept a real even keel. And maybe it's because he's a wasp. I don't know what it is. Maybe a Sicilian gets up a little bit in my blood. But men need to keep a real even keel, especially in a culture such as ours, which is so emotivist. It's so constantly full of passion and vituperation. I find very few things more nauseating than an overly emotional man. Calm down, get a hold of yourself, discipline your will, act like a man, and lead your family.
Thank you, Michael.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I know it's tough after all of the events that happened. I I don't know if I'm going to be the only token liberal here, but I'll try.
I'm glad at least one showed up. I appreciate it.
Hopefully there's more. I'll try my best to play that role. So the current administration has engaged in lawfare, cancel culture, and ideological purity tests, and a lot of things that they've blamed the left for doing. I can give many examples, like Jimmy Kimmel's show being canceled. Luckily, it's coming back, but that's kind of.
I guess he wasn't canceled, was he?
Right,
I think you've kind of undercut your own premise.
It kind of affects the whole media landscape. So Trump trying to fire the member of the Federal Reserve Board by coming up with charges that aren't even being held up in court.
Are they? You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. RFK Jr., just one more example, RFK Jr. firing anyone who disagrees with him on vaccines, firing a 17-member scientific board just because he wants more discussion.
What I'm trying to figure out
arguments. So my question is, do you agree with these? Do you disagree with these actions, or do you believe that these means justify the ends of the America that you want to happen?
I think I'd want a little more clarity on the premise, because just to use your first example, you said that the Trump administration is engaging in cancel culture and the suppression of free speech because the administration got Jimmy Kimmel canceled. First of all, that isn't true. The affiliates got Jimmy Kimmel canceled because he made egregious lies about the murder of Charlie Kirk based on nothing on public airwaves that have to be licensed from the federal government in accordance with the FCC, which exists to regulate broadcast networks.
And it always said things like that. The issue is that 12 hours before he was fired, the FCC head went and said, "Oh, we're going to try to do things they're not going to like. They better change their conduct."
Right.
They didn't have.
But hold on.
They didn't have legal measures. All they had was this threat, and using threats to silence opposition. Like if they have a case, if they have a law, if they have a regulation, go for it. There's no regulation. They're just trying to scare him, and that's scary to me.
But the problem is, even if that were true, and I'm disputing that claim, but even if it were true that Jimmy Kimmel were fired because the FCC pressured him, he's not fired. His show is back on the air. So that example, I think, totally undercuts the point you're trying to make. When you say that Bobby Kennedy, as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, has changed out some of the personnel, yeah, that's what elections do. That's the whole point, is you elect people, and then the president appoints cabinet secretaries, and they replace them with the people that they want in the cabinet. So that's all the prerogative of the president. None of this is out of the ordinary. Every kind of administration would do it.
Sorry, to say that it didn't happen, I don't want to bring a different Trump attempted assassination. Sure, I know it's a bad example right now, but sure, that was unsuccessful, just like firing Jimmy Kimmel was unsuccessful. But it affects our entire culture, our entire landscape. You can't just ignore, say, it never happened and it's fine.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the most apt comparison. It would be entirely within the rights and actually the very purpose of the FCC to regulate the broadcast networks, and it's generally frowned upon to murder presidential candidates. So I don't see the equivalence. If
they say it's misinformation, like conservatives using misinformation to try to go after political opponents. There's no. But does the ends justify the means? Just because
when you say the end,
you do it.
When you're asking me if the ends justify the means, you're suggesting there's a kind of hypocrisy here. There's no hypocrisy to the FCC regulating broadcast networks. That's the point. There's no hypocrisy to the Secretary of Health and Human Services changing out his staff. That's what he does.
They have never done this. They have never done this.
Yes, they have. Cabinet secretaries change out their staff all the time.
Has not to remove the major broadcasters. I want to have
the FCC has this. The FCC has the statutory authority and responsibility to regulate the networks, including in cases of inciting public harm. And by the way, there is no right of a news network to affiliate stations, and there's no right of a news network or a comedy network, so-called, to lie, to tell egregious lies on public airwaves. If Jimmy Kimmel wants to do that on a podcast, he might get better ratings than he does on his network television show, which is in the doldrums, but he has no right to do it on public airwaves. And there's no hypocrisy. There's no double standard.
One thing, silencing people for saying lies. What is a lie? What is truth?
A lie is the opposite of the truth. And what is truth is what Pontius Pilate asked to Christ before he sentenced him to the cross. It's the line of a cynic that surrenders his reason.
He never said anything untrue. He was quoting the governor of Utah who said this person didn't come
Jimmy Kimmel never said anything untrue?
from a different country.
Jimmy Kimmel never said anything. Jimmy Kimmel said that the shooter was a MAGA Republican, and that's a lie. There's no evidence.
One of us, and he quoted by Republicans. Look, we can debate on what.
We don't have to debate. It's a lie. It's an obvious and egregious lie. We don't need to pretend that this is complicated at all. The shooter was a radical left-wing activist who inscribed Antifa slogans on the bullets and was dating a trans furry boyfriend. I don't think he voted for Trump. Kimmel lied. The audience turned on him. The affiliates turned on him. He deserves to lose his job. I'm frankly disappointed that he's getting his job again, but I'm confident even fewer people will watch it this time.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm glad you understood my point.
What are you saying then? I guess I don't understand.
You're not engaging with my point. I thought the whole point of this was not.
I thought you just said that Jimmy Kimmel didn't lie. Isn't that what you said? I think that's what you said.
Jimmy Kimmel didn't. First off, he's okay. Even if we're not going to go on every single word and analyze it, but if we're going to put people off the air for lying, that is a dangerous place to be in. That is a dangerous.
I don't know. I just think that's what public airwaves do. We already have the right to do it. We should do it.
When something is true, because right now.
Well, I guess I think.
It's a sliding. It's a.
I think I can get to the heart. I think I can get to the heart of the point that you might be endeavoring to make, which is you're asking how can we discern the difference between truth and lies? Who's to say what is fit for the public airwaves and what is not fit? Who's to say what is true? And I guess my answer to that, and the traditional American answer to that, is someone's going to say that. You and I can say that. We have a representative government. In principle, we have a self-government. And so we must have confidence in our reason, our ability to discern the difference between truth and falsehood, right and wrong. If we surrender that ability out of moral relativism, out of a squishy kind of cowardice, out of a lack of confidence in ourselves, then what we aren't doing necessarily is surrendering self-government and the entire American project. Many people would like to do that. I'm not willing to do that. I think we can tell the difference between right and wrong, truth and lies. We should promote the truth, we should suppress the lies, and we should have a good country.
So we shouldn't surrender that to the government. We shouldn't have the government.
I thought we had a self-government.
What is true and what is not true?
We necessarily do that by having a judiciary, for instance. We necessarily do that by having legislators who are making moral judgments. When we say that we have a self-government, then what we're saying is that the government in some way is reflecting our view of things, and it comes from our reason.
We also have, we have a judiciary and a Congress, not just the president.
In a what? I don't know, I didn't catch the end of that. Okay. I think the point has been made.
I'm just going to start this out by saying that I wrote this in the end of August, obviously before Charlie's passing. So this was a question for him. But I do think it's important to read, and I did make an edit to it on 9/11, so I will read that as well. But my name's Maria, and I'm going to skip over some things that just for the sake of time. I do believe labels are too emphasized, but in this scenario, I do believe it's important for the context. First and most importantly, I'm a child of God, and I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I hope that for every person here as well. I was born in a very poor country. I was adopted when I was young, and I'm a poster child for anybody who says that they should have been aborted. For the left. I'm very pro-life. I was previously, and shockingly, very pro-choice. And I was almost forced into abortion later in life, and I've also had really horrible experiences with Planned Parenthood. To go off of that, my question and you kind of touched on it today, was about the death penalty and being pro-life. ironically enough, the edit I made to this note on 9/11 was, and I'm going to read this very candidly, but I will censor it. It says, F this, the death penalty is great, and I hope we use it on that guy. F everything.
I think many people agree.
I will say that I do see the difference between an innocent baby in the womb and a murderer or an assassin, but I do still feel like we are playing, as humans, we're playing judge, jury, and executioner instead of God. I do believe that God has a plan for all of us, when we die, we either go to heaven or hell, and he will have the ultimate justice and make everyone, especially murderers, answer for their sins. What would you say to that?
Well, we do play judge, jury, and executioner. We're the only people who can play that because we live in a society, and so we need judges. We need judges to decide lawsuits. We need judges to decide criminal cases and to protect the innocent. We have juries. We're lucky that we have jury trials in our system. And we have executioners because there's nothing intrinsically evil about the death penalty. Some people make arguments from prudence that it might no longer be necessary in our advanced society, though I'm skeptical since we frequently let criminals off the hook, and there are calls from mainstream politicians to abolish prisons. So I actually think that prudential argument is a bit weaker today than it was even decades ago. But St. Paul tells us that the civil authority does not bear the sword in vain. We know that throughout history, at least for the mackerel-snapping papists out here, there have been popes not only who there's some out here in Minnesota. We know for the Catholics in the crowd that we know that there are popes who not only defended the death penalty but actually carried them out, including Blessed Pius IX, who carried out some 500 executions in the Papal States. So I don't think one could say it's intrinsically evil. I don't think we would call St. Paul a murderer. And it gets to the question of what punishment is for. Punishment has three purposes. The first one is retribution. It's because you do something wrong. We don't put people in prison or on death row simply because they have some bad habits. We could all use a little rehabilitation, I'm sure. That's not the reason you go to jail. It's because you did something. So there's retribution for what you did. The second purpose is deterrence and obviously protecting the public. Maybe we loop that in. But then another purpose is rehabilitation. We want to correct these errors in people because it's actually cruel to the criminals to let them persist in their degradation. It's very harmful to their lives and ultimately to their souls. So we want to correct them. This is an argument that goes back to Plato, if not further back. There's a line from Dr. Johnson who says, "Depend upon it, sir, when a man knows he's to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully." That actually, when a man is facing death, it can focus him. It can cause him to think more deeply on spiritual matters. It can actually help to rehabilitate his soul. For this and all of the other reasons, the death penalty has never been thought of as an intrinsic evil, and it can be called for. If you say, then we're playing God, well, are we not playing God when we sentence someone to 30 years in prison? Are we not playing God when we enact any other kind of justice? When we pass any other kind of laws? No, what we're doing is recognizing that God gives certain authority to the civil government for our good, because we live in society. We're a political creature, and we are going to live that way somehow, and so we might as well do it for the common good. That's a responsibility that falls on human beings. We do it to the best of our ability. We ask for God's grace in that, but we can't shirk the responsibility, because the alternative is chaos and disorder. And there's nothing Christian about that.
My mind has been changed a lot on the death penalty even this last week. But I just have a hard time because I think that if we're putting someone to death, I think we might not have known what the plan that God had for them was, because it was
But maybe the plan was that we kill him through the civil authority.
What? Sorry, say that again?
Maybe the plan was that we, through our civil authority, bring him to trial and convict him of a capital offense and execute capital punishment. Why is that precluded from God's plan? Why is that the one thing that we're not allowed to do? You know, I understand the fear and the awe in the face of God of interfering with God's plans. It's very difficult to interfere with God's plans. The only thing you can do is to oppose God, and God is still going to win in the end. You can oppose God when you sin, when you commit an act of evil. There is nothing that I see about the death penalty that is intrinsically evil. And so I think your conscience is clear on that matter. And on anything else, you might say, well, I had a burrito for lunch. What if God wanted me to have a hamburger? You know, he might have. I don't know. We have to ask for God's grace. We have to use our reason to discern his will as best we can. And we have to use our abilities to cooperate with God's will. And we do that prayerfully, and we hope for the best. I don't think there's something magical about capital punishment that excludes that from all the rest of human action.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is I think, again, this is a controversial topic, but I do believe that abortion isn't correct in any case. And a lot of times that includes rape, incest, all of those things. But I will say that a lot of times, even I have used this before, we say that we don't justify evil with evil. And I'm feeling so difficult about this, but I feel like we're choosing evil, you know, or...
So if you think the death penalty is evil, then I could see how you would arrive at that conclusion. But I wonder, you're a Christian, I take it.
I am.
So then how could you conclude that the death penalty is evil when St. Paul writes in the letter to the Romans that the civil authority is given to us for our own good and does not bear the sword in vain? How could you conclude from that the death penalty is evil when he says that it's appointed by God?
I hadn't thought about it like that.
There you go. All right. I helped in one way. Charlie would have taken care of that 5 minutes ago. It takes me a little longer, but I'm glad I could help in some way.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. Charlie would have gotten through that in 15 seconds.
Hey, Michael. Want to thank you for taking your time out of your night to come here. And I know you have a pretty chaotic travel schedule, especially coming from Phoenix yesterday. However, coming from a devoted Christian who gave his life to Christ in 10th grade, which was the best decision I've ever made in my life, I just want to ask, went through high school in a very liberal institution, and I'm now at a very liberal institution for college. How can I go about defending my faith in such a liberal state and a liberal institution?
You're so lucky. You're so lucky because you got fish in a barrel. I strongly suspect, living in our modern culture, you've heard the arguments for atheism. You've heard the arguments for liberalism and all manner of disorder. You've heard them, you've decided they're wrong, and you've come to a different conclusion. When you go to a liberal university, especially in a liberal state, these people have simply never heard the other side. And I can speak a little personally to this, because when I arrived at liberal university, from a liberal state into another liberal state, I called myself an atheist. And I met a lot of atheists who were smarter than me. And I met Christians, and I met Jews, and I met all sorts of people who believed in God, and who I noticed made much better arguments than the atheists. And I think all you really have to do is just figure out what the person's holdup is. For me, it was an intellectual hubris. And so the way to start cracking that was the intellectual arguments for God. Could be the 5 ways of St. Thomas Aquinas, could be the ontological argument. There are many, many good arguments for God. If someone hates God because, I don't know, she hates her dad or something like that, liberalism, then you can, if that's the case, then you speak in a personal way, and you speak in a way that gets at that kind of family dynamic. If you're speaking to someone who's been raised in heretical and erroneous religion and is arguing not against God but a false conception of God, then you correct that heresy. But you have to be, as St. Paul says, all things to all men for their good. And when you're in a liberal university like that, you're going to be speaking to people who have very likely never considered your arguments. It's going to be layup after layup, man. That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I love, the premise of the question is, how do I defend my faith here? Forget about defending your faith. Think about advancing your faith. The gates of hell will not prevail against the church. That means the church is moving. It's on the advance.
to that.
Hi, Michael. My name is Brooke, and I was trying not to come up here and cry, but I guess I'm going to anyway.
I almost lost it at the top of my speech, too. And I do this for a living. It's very difficult these days.
That makes me feel better. Thank you. I had the privilege to see Charlie last year while he was in Madison, and I didn't go up and speak to him, and I really wish I would have told him that he's one of my heroes. But you are too. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. I've been listening to your show every day, and that's been helping me. So, but my question, I do have a question actually, is...
I was just going to leave it on the compliment. That's all.
No, it's a good question though, because I love you. So my question is, in a state that's so liberal, and so many of our churches are really liberal, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go to find good leadership, because I just went to the Lutheran church where I grew up and where I was confirmed, and they kind of glossed over Charlie Kirk and went straight into talking about like Melissa Hortman and other things that are obviously tragedies too, but they just glossed over Charlie Kirk, and that doesn't align with my values, glossing over somebody who died for his religion. And so I'm just wondering, how do I find a church here? Is it just trial and error, or what do I do?
Everyone's just offering suggestions. Come to my church. No, come to my church. Come. I'm no expert on Lutheranism, I gotta admit. However, in my experience as a Catholic, there are plenty of bad homilies and pretty liberal churches with all that sappy music from the 70s and the Birkenstocks, and we don't have to get into it, but it happens. And sometimes the homilies are, half the Communist Manifesto or something, and it's really frustrating. However, in the Catholic understanding of things, which is a sacramental theology, we believe in the Eucharist, the real presence of Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the sacrament. And so, good thing to applaud. So that helps us get through bad homilies. I've been blessed with very good pastors, but that helps you get through bad homilies. And so, with a more sacramental theology, like the mainline Protestant churches, that might help you through bad homilies. In the more non-denominational churches, you're out of luck. I don't know. You got to find a good pastor, I guess, because the whole thing is about the sermon. But I would say, ask yourself why you're going. And the answer to me is I don't go to church primarily to hear a good lecture. I love lectures. I listen to a million religious lectures all the time. But I go there to worship, which is a different kind of act. In a way, it's sort of the distinction between the temple and the synagogue. And so I go there for an act of worship. And I think that if you seek churches that understand what the service even is, that have that different understanding, I think a lot of the rest of it is going to follow. And in our modern culture, I don't think there's anything bad about going to the church across town. Because what's going to happen over time is those liberal churches are going to peter out, because people are showing up on Sunday for something different than the worldliness that they get throughout the week. If all they're getting is the worldliness, no one's going to have kids, the median age is going to be 102, and it's going to go away. Meanwhile, my little recommendation for those interested in the smells and the bells is that if you go to the traditional Latin Mass, the median age is 5 years old, A little advertisement for Rome, but that's where I would go, and have hope and confidence that the future of the church is going to be reverence. The future of the church is going to be orthodoxy. The future of the church is going to be the truth, because the falsehood is going to fall away.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, I just want to thank you for coming and speaking here today. I wanted to give you a hug. I'm sitting in the front row, and I could see the tears in your eyes, and it made me really teary-eyed. So thank you for coming and speaking.
Why would you blow my cover like that? I was trying. Come on, man.
Sorry. I am raised Wells Lutheran, so I very much look up to you as kind of a Catholic brother. I've watched your speeches and your YouTube a lot. I really look up to you. And as a Lutheran, I believe that it is in the best interest of your faith to get married young. I'm 18. I'm engaged. I'm getting married in January.
Wow. Who's the lucky guy? Is he...
He wasn't able to make it, but he really wanted to be here.
Leave him. Leave him. If you've made a terrible decision, you're too young.
He's working for our future, so I think that we can give him a pass.
That's good. That's good. That's fabulous. Wow, that's great. It all works out in God's providence. I'm not one to question things. But if my wife and I had one regret, it would be not getting married earlier and not spitting out 150 kids. But if you get started, if you get started soon, man, you're gonna have a litter of them. That's great. You're gonna repopulate Minnesota.
So I guess you already answered part one of my question, which is what is your opinion on young marriage? But my second part is, what is some advice that you have? Because I know like the first couple of years are really difficult in marriage because it's such a change. What is your advice for us going into this new stage of life?
Okay, now I'll get a little more serious about it. How long have you been dating?
We'll be getting married on our 1-year anniversary.
I kind of wish the fiance were here. I'd grow. So, what are your intentions with my Lutheran sister? What is?
He's also Lutheran, raised by a Lutheran pastor. If that gives you any.
Wow. Okay. So, and he's got a job. How old is he?
He's going to be 21.
21. Okay. So one of you can drink legally. That's good. You get a glass of champagne at the wedding. That's good. Okay. And he's got a job.
Yes.
He's balanced. He's not a lunatic.
No.
What do your parents think?
My parents are in support.
What do his parents think?
Absolutely in support.
Yeah, all right, man, go for it. That's great. I look forward to the invitation. I love it. That's great. Can I tell you what, I'm not even going to give you my own advice. I asked advice of my friend Andrew Clavin, my colleague at the DailyWire, when I got married. And because he's about 150 years old, and he got married before women could vote, actually. And Drew, I said, Drew, what advice do you have for getting married? And I'll give it to you. It's a little bawdy, but you're an adult. You can, okay. So the advice is, first, throw out feminism. Just throw it out. Modern feminism, get rid of it. It sounds like that's not a problem for you guys. The second bit of advice, and this is very, very important, don't sleep with other people. And then basically you'll be good. That's it. Stay together. Understand marriage as a real unit, indissoluble, till death do you part. You're in this thing. I have the Michael Knowles prenup. This is my suggestion, is you sign the prenup and it says whoever initiates the divorce loses everything. That's my kind of prenup. You're not getting split up. You're going to have 1 million kids. You're going to be open to life the whole time. You're going to work as a team. The husband is going to lead. He's going to love the woman. The husband might be the head of the household. The wife is the heart of the household. You're going to grow old together, have zillions of children, and I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Michael. Big fan of you for a couple years now. C.S. Lewis said that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, and shouts in our pains. Now, this pain that everybody's felt across the country, I feel that it's God shouting at us, saying, take up your cross and do something. Now, but we all don't know how to do that. I'm a Protestant. You're a Catholic. I wanted to ask you about the 4 cardinal virtues: prudence, temperance, justice, fortitude. But in practicality, what is the order that you should have these in your heart going forward when you want to actually do something? And secondly, would you like to sign my copy of this fine book?
Wow. Is that my magnum opus?
It
Reasons
is.
to Vote for Democrats, a comprehensive guide.
I would highly recommend it to anybody.
260 blank pages. I would love to sign that. I would. I'll answer your question first. The virtues speak to different aspects of life. So justice obviously is extraordinarily important, and there are different species of justice. Justice is giving to all what they deserve. Religion is a kind of habit of justice that inclines the will to give to God what he deserves. So justice is extraordinarily important in that regard. Prudence is the paramount political virtue. Politics does not exist as 5 bullet points on the back of a napkin. Politics is how we adapt eternal principles to changing circumstances and bring people together to live together in furtherance of the common good. Temperance is the only way that you can have freedom, because you have to be able to moderate between excesses that will compromise your liberty. And courage is one that we frequently forget. Courage is the virtue that is the prerequisite for all of the other virtues. You might think you have the other virtues in spades, but if you're a coward, they are completely useless. So I wouldn't rank them in a hierarchy. I would just recognize that they have integrity and they go together, and you can't really separate one from the other. And then to your much more important question, I would love to sign that best-selling book, Reasons to Vote for Democrats. Yes.
Thank you, Michael.
That man is a scholar. Thank you, sir. That's great. What's your name? Wyatt. Okay. Wyatt, thank you for reading my scholarly tome. There you go, pal. Thanks. Thanks. It's important to read. It's very important to read.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Michael. My name is Elliot Blanchett, and I'm a MAGA man of color. I might just say, it is such an honor to meet you, sir.
That's very kind. The pleasure is all mine. Because you're not only a MAGA man of color, you're a MAGA man of colors. You have the red, the white, the blue on that beautiful shirt, as well as the melanin.
Yes, I'm as patriotic as they come. So I have a 2-part question for you, Michael.
Yep.
So the first part is, since I know you're of Italian descent,
yes,
would you prefer pizza or calzones?
Well, I would prefer pizza. But if we're in the Midwest, and I fear that someone might confuse what I just said for that sloppy casserole that passes for pizza in a town called Chicago, which is perfectly fine as a casserole, but which is not pizza. It's not pizza. I'm an expert on the Italian language and culture. They don't understand. Hot dish, hot dish.
Okay, and the second part of the question that I had is, do you think Minnesota is worth investing in politically?
There are recent problems with Minnesota that have created, obviously the influx of mass migration, which has brought crime, and all of the rioting and looting in the year of our Floyds some 5 years ago, and all. But it's not. People are silly to blame that problem so recently. In 1984, Ronald Reagan won 49 states. The only state that did not vote for Reagan was Minnesota. So the problems of Minnesota, they go back a very long way. But is Minnesota worth investing in? The answer, and I got to channel my inner Charlie here, is obviously yes, because we don't want to just win by a little bit, and we don't want to just maintain the status quo. We want to advance, and we want to win it all, and we want to bring the whole culture back and make the whole country great. So yes, it is. Absolutely. It's one of our states, and we got to bring them over.
Thank you, Michael. God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Thank you. You as well.
Greetings, Mr. Good to meet you. Big fan of the show. I'm quite right-wing in my worldview, maybe to a fault.
No such thing.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
I guess I'll find out.
Because reading the Bible, I read some verses that from a right-wing perspective, I have a hard time squaring that circle. Being conservative, being right-wing, being red-pilled, and squaring that with some of these what seem to be very liberal teachings of Jesus and Paul in the New Testament. And I have one verse here that really stands out to me. It's from the Sermon on the Mount, Luke 6:30. Please try to find all the context that you can, but it's the Sermon on the Mount, so the context is the same as turn the other cheek, love your enemies. Everyone's heard those, but no one seems to talk about Luke 6:30, where Jesus says, give to everyone who begs from you, and from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back.
Yes.
I've tried to get all the context I can. I've tried to steelman it, and I can't square that. Give to everyone who begs from you. Seems to be unconditional. It's not just give to Christians who beg from you, give to people in your community. It says give to everyone who begs from you. If I did that, I'd be broke. We'd all just be living in a commune. We'd all be living in a commune if everyone followed that, And then
except the people you gave to, they'd be living it up on an island somewhere.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my first question, and I have a second one I'd like to get to if you have time.
Okay, sure. Yes. We're told to give freely, of course. So what is our Lord telling us? Because our Lord will tell us, on the one hand, to he who lives by the sword dies by the sword, and on the other, he'll tell us to go sell our cloak and take a sword. What does this mean? Is our Lord contradicting himself? Certainly not. He can't contradict himself, so he's telling us something. And so on the example of giving freely, let's make it really practical, because I've struggled with this myself. Especially when I was coming back to faith. And I read this and I said, what do I do? Do I just give away all of my money and live destitute on the street? No, for two reasons. One, we have certain obligations. We have obligations to to those who are most within our sphere of responsibility, a father to his children, for instance, or to his wife. I think, is it 1 Timothy? I might be getting it wrong. I'm Catholic, so our citations of verse and chapter are a little off. But tells us that a man who does not take care of his own is worse than a pagan. So our vice president actually spoke about this with the Christian concept of the ordo amoris, which St. Augustine writes about, and then St. Thomas Aquinas explains in greater detail as the ordo caritatis, that there is an order to charity. It would actually be immoral for a father to starve his own children to give to some drug addict bum on the street. It would be disordered. It would be immoral for a man who is walking by a swimming pool, two drowning children. One is a child he's never met. One is his own child. He would like to save them both. It would be immoral for him to abandon his own child in order to save another. So there is a way that we order our loves as we give to all. The second part of that, though, is when the drug-addled bum comes up to you and he says, give me some money, and you give him some money, he says, give me more money, and he says, give me all your money. You have to ask yourself, am I really giving to this person? Am I really loving this person? Am I really willing and advancing the good of that person? In many ways, I would like to just give a couple bucks to the bum on the street and be done with it and not have to think about it again. But I know that giving a couple bucks to the bum on the street, in many cases, will be bad for that person because he's going to go take it and he's going to go buy drugs or he's going to go drink. And so I'm not really giving him something. I'm damaging him. I'm not really loving him. I'm neglecting him, and I'm trying to move on. So we're called to give freely, but giving doesn't only refer to our money. We can give of our talents. We can give of our loves. We can give of our care. That, I think, is how you have to begin to understand those verses. Our Lord is identified with the Logos, the divine logic of the universe. Our religion is a religion that makes sense and that has to make sense. This is not true of all religions. Islam, famously, is a voluntarist religion that says that God is purely transcendent and pure will. That, to quote Pope Benedict, who is himself citing a medieval Islamic writer, Ibn Hazm, if the God of Islam commanded his followers to worship idols even, he could do that sort of thing. But that's not our conception. Our religion is one that makes sense. And so we can apply reason and logic to our faith, and we'll find that we only go further and deeper into our faith.
All right. I'm glad you touched on the ordo amoris. That's really how I try to view the world, that you're We shouldn't be afraid to say my family matters more than other families. That's the reality I experience.
It does to you, certainly, yeah, and it should.
As yours should matter more to you than mine.
Yeah.
But how does the unbeliever fit into that? How does, let's say I have a brother who doesn't believe. Does the Ordo Amoris, how does that apply then?
If you run into a baptized bum on the street that you ever met, or your brother who's apostatized or something, who are you supposed to? I think I'll have to defer to the scholastics on that.
Well,
I'm not.
I've got a few Bible verses here that pertain.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
It's one of those very small print Bibles. I have one of those too. It's very hard to read.
I wrote down a bunch here, and unbelievers, here we go. 2 Corinthians 6:14, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. Just don't be yoked together with unbelievers. It's pretty straightforward.
Sure.
For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with the darkness? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? Then there's another one, 1 John 4, 2 through 3. This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, but every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming and is even already in the world. So if my brother doesn't believe, that's the spirit of the Antichrist. Why should I have anything to do with him?
Well, God wills his salvation, and he might be using you as an instrument for his salvation. And he sends you out in a great commission to make disciples of all nations and always to be ready to make a defense of your faith. So I would say, while you should, of course, be aware of the spirit of the Antichrist and recognize the distinction between believers and unbelievers, don't give priority to the Antichrist over Christ. Don't give priority to the privation of good to evil over good, the light who has overcome the darkness. The darkness, rather, has not overcome the light. Recognize that God is constantly creating the world, and God is constantly calling you to be near him, and allow yourself to be an instrument of his. That means sometimes in love rebuking people who are behaving in a way that they should not. That means evangelizing. That means not mincing words about the truth. That means not making light or compromise with false religion. But it means going out boldly. I mentioned this earlier, but our Lord tells us that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Some people seem to think that puts us in a defensive posture, that offensive forces are going to perhaps prevail against us. We're talking about gates, the gates of hell, meaning that Christ's church, the bride of Christ, is advancing. Christ conquers death on the cross, and the church is advancing and shattering the gates of hell and calling all toward him, and you should be part of that. It's not that people cannot turn their will away from God. God does, in fact, give us free will. And as St. Augustine says, he who made you without your participation will not save you without your help. We do have free will, but don't underestimate the grace of God, and don't resist being an instrument of it for everyone's good, especially for your brother.
That's a hypothetical brother. I should say that brother doesn't exist, but
that's good.
I have one last final question, if I could. What do you think?
You've been voted out. Sorry. I would have heard it. I wanted to hear your question, but listen. In the free marketplace, vox populi, vox dei. I didn't set the rules. Trust me. Thank you, though. Thank you.
Real quickly, what's a mackerel snapper? What is a mackerel snapper?
Oh.
What does that mean?
A mackerel snapper is the sort of fella swims the Tiber all the way to the eternal city. A mackerel snapper is one of our icon-loving, medal-wearing, scapular-having papists. I'm talking about the Catholics. That's what it means. It means Catholic. It's because we don't eat meat on Fridays.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here today. So I'm going to preface this first off because I have lots of Catholic friends, but from an Orthodox perspective, because I'm Orthodox, you've previously said before that Orthodox people should just move on and accept the Pope and become Catholics.
The time has come, yes.
But
time has come.
But my problem with that, and I think you would agree to it too, is the fact that a lot of things, if you have a top-down structure like the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church can change a lot of things, like get rid of Latin Mass, not allow people to do pre-60s liturgy, Mass anymore. And with the structure that the early church was set up, it was supposed to be the first among equals. So Rome would decide the decisions if they could ultimately not actually come up with an agreement together. So what would your reconciliation look like if the Great Schism were to be mended?
Spoken like a true Orthodox, eh? I actually don't think the positions are as far apart as they necessarily seem. You grant that at the very least, the Bishop of Rome was always understood to be the first among equals, and was said to, we would say, have primacy, and as this develops, as doctrine must develop, is understood more clearly. But already from antiquity in the apostolic age to be the pontiff, because that is where Peter and Paul both go, and that's where they die. And you read this in the writings of the earliest Christians. So I don't think we really disagree on that point. So then how did the schism happen? I think the schism happened more for politics than it did for theology, and it was backfilled with theology like the Filioque controversy and all the rest of it. But I think that what you had as a development politically is that in the West, the Roman Empire fell. And so the Pope accumulated not only the spiritual power, which he had already had, and the spiritual authority, which he had already had from the beginning, but also a fair bit of temporal power, and he was leaning on various kings and smaller regions to sometimes buoy that power. And you saw a different interplay between the secular and the religious power play out in the West than you did in the East, because in the East you had the Eastern Roman Emperor. And so you had something more akin to Caesaro-papism, and you would even have situations going back into the Middle Ages, but not the late Middle Ages, right after the fall of Rome, where you would have the Eastern bishops come in and they would agree with the decisions of a council, but then the emperor would disagree, and there was all this kind of fighting. And it's all of that to say, I think it was always kind of bound for schism because of that problem. And it's why John Paul II called the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox kind of like the two lungs of the church. But because of that, because I think the schism is really less doctrinal and more political, then it seems more easily resolved, especially now that the Eastern Roman Empire really doesn't exist. So unless we're looking to Vladimir Putin or something as the strong political power, then maybe we have an opportunity, because doctrinally the Filioque controversy could be resolved, and I know some people had problems with the last pope, but now we've got Pope Leo and everyone loves him, so now's the time. The water's warm, come on into the Tiber.
I guess the problem, though, that I have is Latin Mass. It was not allowed by the previous pope. He was stuffing it out in a lot of locations. And your Mass has changed since the 1960s. You don't face...
I've got an answer for you.
You don't face east. You face...
I've got an answer for you. We do, there are different rites of the Mass within the Catholic Church. So there's a Byzantine rite, which is rather similar to the Eastern Orthodox service, and which a lot of Catholics went to because they don't like the new Mass with the happy clappy guitars and all the rest of it. As for the traditional Latin Mass, it's true parts of the Church tried to suppress it. I've attended the traditional Latin Mass throughout the Francis pontificate. They didn't get rid of mine. That was nice. And Pope Benedict XVI says that the Latin Mass really never could have been abrogated, because it's the Mass of the Ages, and it's now the extraordinary form of the Mass. So even that is a little bit overstated, and trust me, I'm as sensitive to issues of liturgy and liberalizing forces, but it's simply a fact, whether you're Catholic or not Catholic. The Catholic Church is the sole institution in the West that has survived since antiquity. And Hilaire Belloc had a good explanation of this. He said that he has to take it as a matter of faith that the church is divinely instituted. But for those who doubt the divine institution, one proof is that no other organization conducted with such knavish imbecility would have lasted a fortnight. The fact that the dogmas remain the same, the fact that the practices, even the disciplines, remain the same, the fact that even all those libs have not succeeded at snuffing out the Latin Mass, tells you, I think, that it's pretty sturdy, at the very least because of historical inertia, and I think because of divine protection.
Thank you.
Also, I can't go Orthodox because I can't grow a beard, so I would not be welcomed.
I can't grow a beard either, Michael. I've been here since 9 a.m. I was the first guy in line, so I'm going to ask for it. Will you sign my hat?
Yes, 9 a.m. If you'd gotten here after 10, I would say no, but 9 a.m., yes.
And thank you. And my actual question is, what do you think is next for the conservative movement?
Charlie was the unifying figure for the movement. It's simply a fact. There is no replacing him in that regard. Trump, at the highest level, would have been the unifying figure who brought a coalition together. On a day-by-day basis, I would say Charlie actually did even more to keep together the disparate factions of the conservative coalition. There is nothing conservatives love more than arguing with each other, than having their super special little obscure moniker. You know, I'm a neo-paleo, this, that, the other. They love it. They all have to be very special little boys, and they all have to fight for power among the various factions. And so what is going to be most missed, I think, about Charlie's presence is not the debates. They were great. They're going to be missed. It's not the TV hits. They'll be missed. The books will be missed. All of it will be missed. It was the coalition building, the coalition maintenance. There is no other figure that fills that role right now. And so the immediate future is going to be, as I see it, a unity for Charlie, for Erika, to keep TPUSA going, to make sure that this mission does not die. That's in the short run. In the longer run, though, there will be various factions trying to fight for power, and especially when the president is no longer running, then you're going to have the other big unifying figure fall away. The only character that I can see at the moment who can really maintain the coalition, who I have confidence in to do that, is the vice president, is J.D. Vance. I think he has an ability to do it. Which is a big responsibility. You know, he has other matters on his plate right now, too. But that's what's going to have to happen, because the biggest threat right now is that without that single figure that we were all friends with, who could really hold it together, things could spin off in different directions. We have to make sure that doesn't happen. Now I'll sign your hat. Hello. Oh, thank you. Wow. I got my own pen. I don't even need that pen. They brought me my own pen. That's good service, huh? There you go. Thanks.
Good evening, Michael. My name is Jack. I appreciate you being here, especially after your event yesterday, that you still made this happen. I believe I have a disagreement, so I got to cut the line, so apologies to everyone behind me. So I'm actually an alumni of the university. I graduated in 2020, everyone's favorite year, where graduations were canceled due to COVID, and we were all under curfew for the George Floyd riots. But I moved to Oklahoma. I did a few years at the Air Force pilot training program, and appreciate it. I ended up separating early, though, to pursue the adoption of 5 Afghan refugee boys, and we went through the roller coaster of the immigration process just 3 days ago. We were in court, and they finalized the adoption, and they all received their U.S. citizenship the legal way. Wow. Thank you. So, but in regards to the disagreement, kind of circling back to the point of Minnesota and not investing, you brought up the point of migration into the state and the immigration. And I think 2 of the large populations here are the Somalian population and the Afghan population. And that goes back decades, right, of these people coming to the state and coming to our country. And while the current administration is doing a lot to address illegal immigration, the fact of the matter is, especially in the state of Minnesota, a lot of these people are here legally. They're lawful permanent residents. And there's a lot to be said maybe about, there needs to be a mindset or culture shift within the populations. But I think it's really easy for the Republicans to be pointing their finger at these populations. What would you say is the solution, the boots on the ground solution for our generation to be addressing that problem, given the fact that even if the ICE enforcements were to go as far as they could, these people were brought here legally. So what is the solution for those people?
The last thing that Charlie said to me when we were speaking, I actually owed him a text, but the last time we were speaking on camera together, the last thing he said was, Michael, I'll see you in Mogadishu, because of the immense population of Somalis in Minnesota. And he was always quick with a line, he was pretty good. And obviously, we've seen this in recent years. I mean, it's just a tremendous growth in this immigrant population, and it's an immigrant population that does not really assimilate and that is associated with lots of crime and a drain on resources, and in the case of a certain member of Congress marrying her brother, but we're not going to name names, but that is immigration fraud, and you could deport her for it, but I don't want to get in the muck of that. So that's a big problem, and you say, well, a lot of them came here illegally. Not Ilhan Omar, she came here illegally, but not because of the fraud, but anyway, but some of them came here legally. And the answer is that we have to drastically reduce legal immigration as well as illegal immigration. Not because we don't like the people, not because these are bad people necessarily, some of them are, but because no country can absorb an unlimited number of a foreign population. It's simply not possible. It's no knock on them. It just does not work. And so in the case, you mentioned, you've done this very charitable act. Thank you so much. You've done this really charitable act of adopting young boys from a foreign population. If someone comes here at a very, very young age, the odds that they are going to assimilate to the culture, especially being raised in a family from that culture, are pretty good. If someone comes here at age 30 and it's an economic migrant and they don't want to learn the language and they don't want to assimilate and they're going to live in their own ethnic enclaves and commit crime, it's just not going to happen. And so we have to drastically reduce immigration, because immigration is not a right for anybody. Exactly, and it's not just about ticking up GDP, and America's not just an idea. It's a real country, and real countries have real traditions and have real peoples, and they have real places and geography. And so we have to be able to acknowledge that, and we have to be able to say, look, we're a country that at various times has let in a lot of immigrants. We're also a country at various times that has basically stopped immigration for large swaths of American history. And now I think we're kind of in one of those times.
And so, and I would say my boys are maybe the exception to the rule. They have a Trump 2024 flag
now we're talking.
Still hanging in their
Bring more then, bring more.
Right. Muslim boys, right, growing up in a very small town, conservative town. But so what I'm hearing from you is it's very much a go forward strategy. But coming back to maybe my original question of, what's the solution, though, for current state, Twin Cities? The population is here. Say we don't let anyone else in. They are reproducing at a rate much faster than, maybe with the exception of the Catholics, but much faster than most people in this city. So what is the strategy in order to try to inspire these people to assimilate here, rather than just kind of pointing our finger and saying it's a problem?
Right, well, someone just suggested everyone else needs to have more babies. That's a good suggestion, I agree. But also what you have to do is you have to enforce the law. So the Somalis who are here, for instance, who are committing all sorts of crimes, they need to be arrested and they need to be punished for those crimes. The Somalis who have committed immigration fraud, not naming names, they need to be let go from their places of employment, even if it's the U.S. Congress, and they need to return to their country of origin. And so you can enforce the law in a just way that's not capricious or arbitrary or ex post facto. But one of the big problems is when someone is here legally or they do gain citizenship, there's not really much you can do. And so you do have to look forward, and you have to more seriously weigh the consequences of letting these people in the first place. You could go a long way by simply enforcing the law here and by refusing to accommodate the eccentricities of their culture, forcing them to learn English, making it a requirement that you assimilate in order to access public services and resources. That's one way to do it. You add a lot of pressure, and when you add all of those incentives together, suddenly it turns out people begin to react to them. The problem is, for decades, we have had all of the wrong incentives pushed by all sorts of terrible politicians who were giving up the public good in order for their own private interest to advance. That was especially true in Minneapolis and Minnesota. It's true throughout these Democrat states and cities. That's why it's so important to take concrete political action in order to change it. This is something I know that our dear friend Charlie would have done. What made him so valuable, one of the things that made him so valuable to our country is he didn't just pontificate. He wasn't just some bloviating talking head. He wasn't just an idea man. He actually brought things to bear for real political effect. He'd go out to those populations that could be convinced. He'd pull them over to vote for the right guy. He would move the Republican Party to the right on certain issues, including on immigration. He would win the elections. Susie Wiles said yesterday he made the winning difference in 2024. He would go out there to win the elections, to amass the political power, to wield the law in a just way, to begin to move our country back to something that is recognizable and desirable, and show at the very least that can be done. We can do it. We don't need to throw up our arms. We don't need to say there are too many Somalis or whatever and now the country's over. It's not over. It's a strong country. It's a great country. The bones are there. The muscle is still there. We can do it. We have to want to do it. We have to be committed to doing it. And I think in part we have to do it to honor our friend. Thank you so much for the question.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing we're out of time. Do we get another question?
Oh, that was our last one.
That was our last one. Darn. Wonderful to be with you all. Thank you so much for your courage showing up tonight. Thank you. Wonderful to be with you.